You may find yourself living in a shotgun shack, and you may find yourself in another part of the world, and you may find yourself behind the wheel of a large automobile, and you may find yourself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife, and you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? Letting the days go by, let the water hold me down. Letting the days go by, water flowing underground into the blue again. After the money's gone, once in a lifetime, water flowing underground. And you may ask yourself, how do I work this? And you may ask yourself, where is that large automobile? And you may tell yourself, this is not my beautiful house. And you may tell yourself, this is not my beautiful wife. Letting the days go by, let the water hold me down. Letting the days go by, water flowing underground into the blue again. After the money's gone, once in a lifetime, water flowing underground. Same as it ever was. 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 Same as it ever was.
Now, before I dive into all the videos of the filming locations throughout Vermont, I did want to just touch base real quick on this location here in New York. I did not visit this location, but this is the site that they filmed the farmers leaving the city. So they were leaving their residence on their way to move out to Redbud. Not quite the same, but you get the idea. I'm here in Reading, Vermont, and I'm on Jenny Road Farm, which is this farm you see right off here in the distance. This was the farm that was featured in one of the early scenes of Funny Farm when Andy and Elizabeth are on their way to Redbud. They are having a picnic on this site, so right here would have been a blanket. That's where Elizabeth was having a picnic, and Andy was actually down over this hillside right here. I could step forward here a little bit. I don't know how well you can see how it's coming out, but this is a slope and it drops way down to the lower part of that field. But Andy was taking a Polaroid of a cow and you can see the farm over his shoulder off in the distance. And when he snaps the picture, he comes running up this hill towards where I'm standing. You'd also see that house off in the distance. But he runs up this hill and he comes right up to here where Elizabeth is sitting on the blanket having a picnic, and he's showing her the pictures.
Oh, by far.
Now, whether you have seen Funny Farm or not, chances are you have seen this farm off in the distance here in either another movie, TV show, commercial, or possibly even a calendar. The reason that I'm saying that is this farm is one of the most photographed farms in the United States. Photographers flock to this area because of its picturesque background. You have obviously the rolling hills, the green pastures, the mountain backdrop, all the foliage, just the natural beauty of this area brings photographers out here throughout different times of the year to photograph the farm in this area from right here where I'm standing at this view. Now, a movie that featured this location is a movie that almost everybody has seen, and it was taken from right here where I'm standing, and that was in the movie Forrest Gump. Now, they show Forrest when he was documenting his run across the country. Forrest would come running down along this road under these trees, and then the camera kind of pans and it opens up like this, and you can see the farm off there in the distance just like that.
I'd think a lot about Mama and Bubba and Lieutenant Dane, but most of all I thought about Jenny.
I'm here in Perkinsville, Vermont, and this is Downer's Covered Bridge right here in front of me. This covered bridge was shown a few times in the movie Funny Farm. The first time is when Andy and Elizabeth are driving on their way to Redbud. So they'd have driven right along here in their little convertible across the bridge, and they show them come out the other side. So they would have come right through the bridge and come out here onto this road. I'm here in Wethersfield, Vermont, and this is the location where the Redbud sign was. It would have been stuck in the ground right here on a wooden post. And you see this location 2 times in the movie. The first when Andy and Elizabeth are on their way to Redbud in their convertible. So they come along this country road here, they turn, right there's a Redbud sign, and then they drive off in that direction. Now this is much more overgrown than it was during filming, but this is certainly the spot. The second time you see this location is when the 2 guys cut down the Redbud sign. The Redbud sign would have been right here in the ground. They would have cut the post, the sign falls. Then you see the 2 guys' heads kind of get into the foreground of the camera, and they run down this street in that direction with the Redbud sign.
Get out of here. This is the best one yet. Yeah, I bet we could trade this one for a railroad crossing.
Now that's when you see the moving van coming. It comes along here, down this road. Of course, it misses its turn because they don't see the sign, and they head off in that direction. And as the farmers first arrive, this is where they show them driving up, where Andy lets out like a yoo-hoo. They come around this corner here and alongside of the driveway, right as my finger's going. There would have been a wooden fence here instead of the stone wall that you see. But they would have come right up here as the camera kind of followed them, and there was some low-hanging branches that they kind of shot that through. So the camera would have stopped like here. The car would have been here, and that's where the farmers would have gotten out. Now, when the farmers first arrive at their house, Elizabeth and Andy come running right out here. And they come running along the lawn, and they kind of stop roughly here. And this is when the camera sort of pans around. It pans around Elizabeth and Andy, and it just sort of shows the beauty of this area. This house is actually perched up on top of a hill.
Oh. Am I crazy, or is it even prettier than the day we bought it?
No, you're right.
I am right, it is pretty. The ducks are still here.
I think they must live here, Andy.
That means they're all right. I bet I could reach in there with my bare hands to pull out a fish.
Now, when Andy and Elizabeth are coming up to the house for the first time, they come to this front door right here.
Woo.
And that's where Andy stops and picks Elizabeth up and tries to carry her into the house. This door was one of those, it's like a 2-part door. I don't know the exact name of it, but had the latch so the top could open and the bottom could stay closed, or vice versa. So when he opened the door, only the top had opened, and then the bottom was still closed. So that's when he kind of stepped forward and then dropped her into the house.
Carry you out.
I heard that.
Nonsense, you're light as a feather. Jeez. Oh.
This is Andy's office. That's up there. If I swing around here, you can probably see the window. There it is. And right there's the window that you see Andy looking out. That would have been Andy's window, his office window.
Come here, look at this. What is that, a finch? A lark?
And then right here you can see is a tree. So on one of these limbs is where the birdhouse would have been. So when Andy opens up the window, he would have been chirping and looking at the bird. It would have been right from there. Right up there. Now right here is the location of where the farmer's mailbox stood. Roughly where that tree is now growing. There was a mailbox that was put there just for filming, and there were some stones, some rocks are out there to basically show you how this is a split. So this is the farmer's driveway, and this would have been the road that Crum Petree continued on after he threw the mail out. But this is where they show Crum. The first time that Andy sees him, he comes screaming around this corner right here, and the look on his face, it goes from smiling to like shock. Crum would have come screaming around there with the old truck, backfiring and smoking. And this is where he would have come over here and thrown the mail at the mailbox and continued along that. This used to be a road at one time, and it was tree lined on both sides. Unfortunately, some of those trees were taken down, so it does look a little different. But this is where that occurred. And then the driveway here pretty much looks the same.
Oh, honey, are you all right?
Jesus, what the hell was that?
But this is also where you see Andy standing out here with a sign that says, "Please stop." And of course, Crum does the usual thing. Crum comes racing around the corner again here, blows right past Andy with his laugh off in that direction with the pickup truck. And that's when Andy's like, he's like fed up with it. He's frustrated. He's yelling as Crum goes speeding off in that direction.
You're not dealing with some ignorant hick here!
The second time you see this bridge is when the movers are on their way to Redbud, trying to find their way to Redbud, I should say. And they come down this road right here. So this is where the moving truck was driving. They come around this corner from this road up here, around the corner, and this is where they pull up to the front of the bridge right here. Crocker's driving, and that's when he stops the van, and he's sort of eyeballing the van or the bridge, and that's when Mickey's like chiming in. He said it looked like termites holding hands, so I got a kick out of that scene. Mickey said he wouldn't cross this bridge on a skateboard.
This ain't a bridge. It's termites holding hands. We're going over it. Not me. I wouldn't go over this thing on a skateboard. We're going over it.
And Crocker's telling him to have some faith in the craftsmanship of his forefathers, and Mickey's like, "Your forefathers, not my forefathers."
Have a little faith in the craftsmanship of our forefathers.
Your forefathers, not my forefathers. Oh, Lord.
But you definitely see, this is what they see as they start to inch their way out. You can see these beams inside the bridge here. So they do start to inch their way out here in the van. And then, of course, this thing starts to crumble. But the van would have been sitting parked right here when this bridge crumbled in the movie. This is also the location where Andy comes running down the driveway when he sees the movers coming. So he comes running down here. He comes up alongside of the moving truck, and he's yelling at the guys.
Well, it's about time! Where the hell have you guys been?
So they're slowly driving up this driveway. He's sort of like jogging beside them, yelling in the window.
Oh, man. Did you hear that?
Nope, I didn't hear
Out of
anything.
somebody's ass for this! Perhaps you heard that.
He's basically what took them so long, where the hell have they been? The guys are driving along here, and you can see all this in the background as they go up towards the house.
You're a day late, damn it! We were asleep on the floor last night! Where the hell have you idiots been? What that?
Several scenes were shot right here at this angle. It's also where you see the moving truck when it arrives. It pulls up here.
Now we're getting somewhere.
This way. Good choice.
Follow me.
Andy in the mover with the chair would have come walking right down along here.
On the second floor, it's the last room on the left. And that is top quality leather, so watch it going up the staircase.
Andy was telling him to bring the chair around this way. Instead, he carries the chair right along here and over to the pond, where he promptly tosses it into the pond. But right over here is where that scene happened.
Hey, fella, hey! Wait! Stop!
So this is on the side of the house, and this is where Elizabeth would have been out doing some gardening. So this has changed a lot since filming. There was just some flower beds, some sort of like rectangular flower beds that were out here. So she would have been working, and right up there is Andy's office. So he would have been looking down at her, kind of dozing off as she was out there doing the manual labor, and he was in there supposed to be writing his book.
How's it going?
Fine, great.
That's good.
But she would have been working roughly out here, and right up there is where Andy would have been working in his office.
Well, back to work.
Now, when Sheriff Ledbetter was exiting the house, he came out of that door, and that's when Elizabeth and Andy were walking with him.
Thanks for all your trouble, Sheriff. I'd say the worst is behind you now, but be careful where you dig in the future.
Right over here is the door that Sheriff Ledbetter would have been coming out with Andy and Elizabeth. And as I said, this little doorbell of sorts is actually still here. You can see that in that scene.
Thanks for all your trouble, Sheriff. I'd say the worst is behind you now, but be careful where you dig in the future.
Our mailman tried to run us down with his truck, and then he threw our mail out into the road.
You're on Crum Petree's route, aren't you? Problem is, your place is 5 miles off his regular route. By the time he gets all the way out to here, he's pretty well liquored up and pissed off.
It's also when you see Sheriff Ledbetter, when his taxi was here.
The sheriff always ride around in a taxi?
Yep, ever since he flunked his driving test.
This is one of the angles that they show Andy when he was fishing. He would have been standing right there on the bank.
Sorry, fellas.
Andy walks over, he picks up a rock to try to get the snake, hit the snake with it. He picks up a rock here under the tree, and that's when he looks up here towards the front door, and he can see the snake slithering into the front door right there.
Oh, no.
Honey.
And then right here is that tree. Now, when we first see Andy and Elizabeth arrive here in Redbud, they were coming down this road right here, and they passed this telephone pole where there was a banner that said Founders Day Picnic on it.
Founders Day picnic. Softball. Sounds like fun. Want to go?
Don't think so.
So they would have been driving in the little convertible car, and they turn and go right off in this direction. You can see that drive is very visible. These trees were not here. A lot of these trees have grown up. This is more grass, but you can see a few buildings that are now obstructed by the trees. Those were visible, more visible in that shot, but they came driving right along here and came into Redbud. So this is where they have the little discussion. They're going to go in and do some antiquing.
Ethel Antiques. Let's take a look.
But then Andy hears a crowd off in the distance. There was a baseball game.
Why don't you head off to the ball game? I'll find you later.
No, I don't mind. Well, okay.
Now, there actually is not a baseball field here or the location that they use for that. I'll get to that. I'm going to show you that. It's in another location altogether. But this is the direction that Andy would run when he goes to take in the baseball game. So he runs towards this gazebo right over here. Now there's actually a movie prop still standing in Townshend, Vermont from the movie Funny Farm, and it's residing right here in this courtyard area, and it is the gazebo. Now this gazebo was built for the movie Funny Farm, and the Townshend community enjoyed it so much that they asked the production crew after filming to go ahead and leave it, and they did. And so it very much looks like it did during filming, except for one particular thing. See the staircase, how it's off here on the right side of what I'm filming? In the movie, it was actually on the opposite side. So that's the glaring difference in how it appeared in the movie and what it looks like now. So that staircase would have been right here against this side. So you would have entered the gazebo right like this. And as a matter of fact, if I step back here like this, there was a scene in the winter scene where there was, they were singing Christmas carols. They were set up, and the staircase would have been right here. The way that you would have gone up would have been right there. Now, the way that I can tell that is when you see Andy first run over towards this gazebo, he's on his way over to see the baseball game. He's running right along here. He's running towards the gazebo in this direction. And you can see this long rectangular piece of the gazebo, the green here. There would have been a bench right there. And then over here is a smaller little green section. You can see that visible. And then the staircase would have been right here. But they built this for the movie. It's still standing, and it looks pretty good, all things considered, being that it's a prop that's just sitting here all these years. Now, there was an interesting thing that happened to this gazebo. It was actually hit by a car. A drunk driver actually careened into it from this road right over here and damaged this side of it. Now, when Andy first arrives here to the baseball game, he actually stops at the concession stand. So they had a concession stand that was situated right here. It was set up here. And you could actually see this basketball court. As a matter of fact, you could see a basketball goal that was in the picture. But the concession stand that Andy's at would have been right here. And they also show another scene. They also show another view looking towards the baseball field from the concession stand. So Andy would have been right about where I'm standing here, and this tree is visible in that shot. And this is the location that was used for the baseball game during the Founders Day picnic. This location actually is nowhere near Townshend, which is what served as Redbud in the movie. It's quite a ways away. So that scene where Andy's running over to the gazebo towards the baseball game, it wasn't anywhere near that spot in real life. This is quite a ways north. But this is where the baseball field scenes took place. This is where Redbud played its game. I can't remember the team that they were playing against, but Andy was over there at the concession stand. He came running over here, and there was a section of seating that was right here. This would have been the dugout. You can still see how it is a dugout of sorts, but it's not how it was depicted in the movie. And then over here is the backstop. The backstop during filming, this lower portion of it had like a cover on it, so you couldn't see straight through like you can now. Same thing over here. You had the dugout and then the section of seats. This building was not here during filming. And as a matter of fact, everything that you see out beyond here, a lot of this tree growth was not really like that, because you could see a rooftop of a building that was off in the distance right out here during some of those scenes that you cannot see now. It's all overgrown. And this is the building right here that I was referring to that you could see from beyond the backstop at the baseball field. See this interesting looking roof, how it has this little part that kind of projects outward on the top of it? That's visible from the ball diamond. So the baseball field would be over there beyond those trees. And all this is kind of grown up and it obstructs the view. But this is that building that I said you can see off in the background. But this is where Andy would have come over. He would have sat right over here. He would have been watching the game unfold. And there was so much comedy in this game. I mean, when the catcher gets hit in the head with the bat, he's literally laying on like home plate.
Strike three. Sorry, Mary.
And I remember the woman, they show a woman in the crowd. She would have been standing over here in the seating section, and she's yelling something like, "Pick up the ball, pick up the ball." Here's this guy that just got hit with a bat laying, hit with the bat in the head laying there on the ground. You got like an outfielder that's like running in, kind of like, what do I do? What do I do? So the batter is rounding the bases, was all this going on. I mean, it was hilarious. But this is everything that you see. Now, I saw on the internet that the location for this was in Heartland, and they had it marked at a different spot than this, and it just didn't seem right to me. I looked at it over and over. Finally, I realized it was over here, so I'm going to contact the webmaster for that site. But a couple things that I'll mention that you can't really see right now because it's obstructed by the trees. There's a white building that's over here, and it has sort of like a small steeple top to it. You can see that in one of the scenes. I'll go over and show you a different angle. You can't see it through these trees right now. You can also see there's a playground that's out here off in the distance. So out over the outfield wall, you can see it out here. There's some playground equipment. That's all visible as well. Okay, I came over here to show you the back of this building that I was referring to that you couldn't see through the trees. See this little steeple? It probably has a name different than steeple, but I don't know what the proper name is, so I'm just gonna call it a steeple. See how the steeple's right there, and then there's this little, almost looks like a small little chimney that's like right here. You can see this backside of this building, as well as this part of it here with all the windows, that bank of windows. You can see that off in the distance for some of those outfield shots. So this is the antique store of Redbud, and as you can see, it looks very much like it did during filming. In fact, it still says antiques above the window, although in the movie it was bigger lettering and it was higher up.
Any questions, feel free to ask.
But this would have been the store that Elizabeth walked into, and unfortunately it's closed, and it's actually going through some sort of a renovation or a remodel. So you can clearly see it does not look like it did during filming. However, pay special note to this window here that I'm showing you, the shelving that's on it. If you remember, Elizabeth was literally looking through this window, and there was, I think there were like teapots, tea kettle, teacups. There were some items that she was looking that were right there.
That belonged to my sister. She's dead. Oh, sorry.
So you can see that as she's browsing throughout the shop. And another thing I'll show you that's very noticeable in that is over here off to the side, right through here. Now I can't point because I'm up against glass, but look straight ahead. You sit on the right, you see a staircase that goes up. To the left, you see a doorway. Elizabeth would have been sitting in a chair right here in front of where I'm shooting, and she would have been looking towards the same direction that I'm showing. So if you remember, the older woman that was the owner of the shop went to go, she was going to go make Elizabeth some iced tea, and that's when Elizabeth looked. She was sitting in a chair right here in front of me, looked over her right shoulder and saw the stuffed squirrel, and it made her scream. So you'll see that staircase and that doorway as the shop owner came towards her just to tell her it was just a stuffed squirrel.
He won't hurt you, dear. He's stuffed.
But this is the interior of that antique store that was used in Funny Farm.
I'm glad to help out, fellas. I hope this won't take too long.
So this is the lake that they would have been fishing in for Funny Farm. This is the lake that Andy goes out onto with the 3 other guys to fish. They were right out here in the middle of the lake. And when the way they're anchored and they're sitting out there fishing, you can clearly see that mountain off in the background. But this is one of the funnier scenes in the movie when Andy hooks Brock in the neck and tries to get the hook out, and he basically beats the living hell out of him trying to knock him out so they can remove the hook.
Knocking him out, you're only beating the piss out of him.
But that was all filmed right out here in the middle of the lake. And then when they were all trying to get Andy, Andy decides to jump ship, jumps in the water, and he swims up to shore. But that was all filmed right out here.
Sleep!
So when Elizabeth first comes to the lake looking for Andy, she's standing right about here, and all these trees are visible in that shot, including this one in particular. It has since grown, but it has sort of a quirky bend to it. And this one, with the way that the limbs branch out right about here, and these, how they shoot off to the side, to the left, you can see a little bit of a gap there. That's all framed in that shot when she's standing here looking for Andy. And when Sheriff Ledbetter is coming here to the lake to find Elizabeth, this is where he drives the car right into the lake.
I got something here for you, Miss Farmer.
If you remember, it was a driving school car. He was driving. There was an instructor riding, passenger with him, but he's calling, Mrs. Farmer, Mrs. Farmer, and he keeps driving. He goes straight into the water from right here. And if I turn around, this is the location that the car would have been coming. So he'd have come down the hill, been coming straight towards where I'm filming.
Farmer! Miss Farmer! I've been looking for you, Miss Farmer.
So I went ahead and came out here into the water, right where Sheriff Ledbetter drives his car, straight into the water to where I'm standing right now. So this is where the car would have stopped. Notice I didn't say park because he just gets out and then he wades up on shore to give her the letter.
I got something here for you, Miss Farmer.
But this tree is visible, this one as well, but in particular this one has sort of like a quirky twist to it. But this is where they shot that scene when Sheriff Ledbetter drove his car right here into the water.
Can I speak to you for a minute?
Now when Andy comes out of the lake after he jumped off the boat, he comes walking right up here. So when Elizabeth is talking to Sheriff Ledbetter, you can see Andy getting closer and closer as he comes up onto the shore.
You want to give him the best burial money could buy.
So this tree right here to the right is visible in that shot, and you can still see the root system. That's how it projects outward here where the water comes around. This is where Andy comes out of the water. So he comes out right here and walks towards the direction I'm filming. So right out here is where the farmer's car would have been parked. Andy walks up to it, soaking wet, gets in the car, and that's when Elizabeth walks out, gets into it as well, and then they drive right up this there's like a little roadway right here, a little hillside, and they drive up there on their way back to Redbud. Now when the farmers get their first dog, they let it run loose out here, and it runs down here towards the pond, and it's chasing the ducks. And that's when it turns and it runs off in this direction. And as you can see, it's almost like a field of sorts. They keep it very well maintained, but it extends down off the crest. So that's where they show the dog running along that tree line down there off into the distance.
Sure likes to run.
Hey! 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 Come back! Dog! Dog! Hey! Hey! Come on! Heading south for the winter, eh?
Welcome back, fellas.
So this location right here in Redbud is where Ivy's Cafe once stood.
Andy, that's your third order.
I am booked, Elizabeth. Call me Mr. Lamb Fries.
Unfortunately, it's no longer standing. You can see how there's a building over here, a building over there. Ivy's Cafe would have been situated right here at one point.
Now there's a man who knows when he's got something good in his mouth.
You polish off that plate and you break the record.
Stand back, everybody. The record falls tonight.
Look at him go.
I believe you, he's right. I believe that record will fall tonight. And it's still going. I thought that record was gonna last forever. Most folks just don't seem to have a taste for testicles no more.
Testicles?
Yes, ma'am. Sheep balls.
So right here is the location that they used when Andy was camouflaged and he was sitting here on the hillside with the boulder. But Andy would have been right here with the boulder. Now he was waiting for Crum, Petree, to come blazing past here on his driveway on the mail route. So these trees, you can still see them, how they're tree lined. This drive is a tree line drive. They're much bigger than they were during filming. They were more like saplings during the filming. But Crum would have come zipping up here, and this is where Andy was plotting to roll the boulder right down here and hit him. Now, if you remember, Michael Sinclair shows up. He beeped the horn. Andy thought it was Crum. He came running out here, and this is where they show Michael Sinclair. He comes up and he parks his car right there at that clearing. Now that's where Andy is running down there and asking him, why was he beeping?
What the hell do you think you're doing? Are you nuts? What were you honking at?
And Michael Sinclair informs him that he works with his publisher and he's here. That's when they hear the horn. Now Crum is on his way.
My name is Michael Sinclair. Wait, shut up a minute. Listen. Shit. Give me a hand with this.
So that's when Andy has Michael help him roll the boulder up. He's just like rolling the boulder up this grade.
Yeah, what's the point of this? Just keep pushing, you'll see.
They get back up here to the position, and that's where Andy's asking Michael to hold the boulder, and he can't any longer.
The boulder. Now, let it go. I can't. Now, goddammit. I can't.
So that's where you see it roll over his back. It goes down along here, just misses Crum, and of course that's where Michael's car is parked, and it smashes into it. But that happened right down there. And this would have been the town hall in Redbud, where they had the meeting, where the farmers had the meeting with the community members of Redbud to see if they could help them sell their house.
Lamb Fry record holder. I'm sure Mr. Farmer is familiar to you all.
Now you can clearly see the stages up there. There's a backdrop that's there now, but if you remember during filming, it looked like there was a doorway that was right there. The mayor and his colleagues were sitting at a table that was right up there. Now this room is currently set up with a bunch of tables and chairs that are stacked here, but there would have been an aisle that would have been right here, and there would have been seating for everybody of Redbud.
I'm sure Mr. Farmer is familiar to you all.
When Andy and Elizabeth were here to meet with them about trying to sell their house. So this is a scan of what this room looks like. And if I look back in this direction, you can clearly see there's a doorway that's there during filming.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley, members of the council, citizens of Redbud.
And this is where Andy and Elizabeth would have met with them, and Elizabeth would have walked through, handed out magazines of what she was hoping would be depicted, what the people of Redbud could help do as far as their part in helping them sell their house.
looking for?
Another quick shot that they show of the front door of this house, the upper part right here, is when Andy and Elizabeth were inside with the walkie-talkie. That's when the guys were over here off to the side with the deer in the little cage. When Andy says the infamous quote, "Cue the deer."
Cue the deer. Roger.
That's when they release the deer over here. Right here would have been the door that Crum, Petree, and Andy come out of.
Ice fishing?
I thought it was a nice touch.
So that's when Crum was walking out here, and Crum was telling him how it was going to cost him. But Crum and Andy would have come out that door. Now, when the farmers and Culbertsons come to Redbud for dinner, they would have pulled right up here. And this is where Bud and Betsy would have stepped out of the car, and they're just taking in the sights and sounds of Redbud. So you can clearly see this building in the background as the Culbertsons step out. And that's also when the farmers are just sort of mesmerized because they're looking around and it's an extremely festive atmosphere. Everybody's out doing their part, trying to earn their share of the money for when the farmers sell the house.
This is going to cost us a fortune.
The $50 bonus was your idea.
Little piece of heaven, isn't it, Bud?
Now, there was a sign right here for the antique store that is tucked away under there. And then there would have been a covered bridge, like a decorative covered bridge that would have gone over this driveway towards that, done up for Christmas.
Oh, Merry Christmas. Andy?
Now, this is also where Sheriff Ledbetter would have pulled up in his car. So he made the turn and he pulled up and stopped the car right here. Notice I didn't say parked because this is where he gets out and comes over to greet the farmers at Culbertson.
Merry Christmas, folks! Merry Christmas!
And this is where his car starts to drift and roll off in that direction.
Absolutely, twice a day. Check for any suspicious vehicles or persons in the area. If the owner's on vacation, I try the locks, pick up all the newspapers.
That's where Andy sort of like shuffles the Culbertsons across the street over there to Ivy's Cafe. Of course, Sheriff Ledbetter's car goes off in this direction, but there would have been a pine tree, a Christmas tree, all decorated with lights. Would have been roughly here. That's where Sheriff Ledbetter's car would have rolled into the tree and smashed into it. Another time you see this house is in the winter, towards the very end of the movie, where the farmers come out and tell the people of Redbud that they're actually not moving, they're staying. So the people of Redbud were all gathered right here, and that's when they start pelting the farmers with snowballs. Andy gets hit right in the face, but that happened right here.
I have good news. We're not leaving. We've decided to stay. What about our money?
We still get our money, don't we?
Find it in your hearts. Perhaps not.
And this seating section over here is also where you see Elizabeth come over towards the end of the movie when she's pregnant to meet Andy.
But one thing we had right. Moving to the country was the best decision we ever made.
I'm really going to be sorry to see the farmers go.
Well,